Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today we have with us our first returning guest, Mr. Paul Tron, even though he didn't go by that last time. It's Mr. Paul Carr. Pen name. Ooh, you got a new pen name, Mr. Paul Tron. I like it.
No, I mean, actually, I think I have to because when I posted my first little ebook on Amazon, there was another Paul Carr doing murder mysteries. So,
just such a generic name. We got to get you a little bit of recognition there.
Yeah, I don't know how that worked out, but yeah.
Well, I think your parents are probably long lost cousins of these people. You're probably related to him.
Probably, yeah. I got the writing gene.
So, like I said, first returning guest, and I'm not sure if that means that I am now so popular that people are just itching to get back on the podcast, or if I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel, asking for people to return. But actually, Paul did reach out to me, and he said that he wanted to talk to me about AI in writing, and I think that that's a wonderful idea. But before we get into AI in writing, I think specifically there's some current events going on right now, specifically with ChatGPT and other various AI things that are being suddenly thrust into the market. So what has your experience been with this so far?
So for me, I just tried it out. That was my kind of foray into it, as I encourage just about everybody to do. It was something that I kind of knew about, like from a scientific perspective, like people were working on this kind of stuff. Some of the claims and some of the stuff that can be done with it. Seeing like the image stuff that started first with, who the first image people to do it were, but I think it was like Stable Diffusion, or Dolly, maybe Dolly 2. Anyway, so I kind of started messing around with it, the image stuff first, and then once the writing one, ChatGPT, kind of just blew everyone's minds. Like when that came out, I think they were the biggest. They acquired the most unique users in like the shortest period of any like website of all time, like beating out Twitter, beating out Instagram, everything. Just like millions of users within days. So, like everybody, I was trying to put it through the ringer and see kind of what this is all about. You're seeing people just use it for the wildest things, writing business proposals, coming up with ideas for vacations, trying to come up with poetry for their loved ones. People found endless uses for this. So I kind of wanted to just, as I was playing around with it, I was also doing some writing. And then, I'm sure this isn't unique to me or anything, but I was like, kind of bored writing, as I am often, which is probably not a good sign for a writer. But so I just started fiddling around and started putting some of my text into the ChatGPT just to get it to like do different things with it. And it was just like the potential is almost unlimited for that. Go ahead.
So my question then would be, are you using it for inspiration or to bounce ideas off of, or what exactly is going on there?
So what I showed you was I was using it to, in that case, this was like later on down the line, I was using it to interview myself essentially about my world building stuff. So I was kind of getting...
Am I not good enough? Like, come on.
I can only schedule you 2 weeks out, man. This thing is just right there whenever I need it. But yeah, so it was, so I was kind of using it to just, prompt me with questions that I could, come up with my own input to, just to help me flesh out some ideas and stuff. And so that was one kind of really interesting use that I didn't even think of at first. But at first, what I was just doing was, so I was a little suspicious of it. I'm like, is it going to take away my agency? Is it going to, replace me? Like, what's the deal here? Like, how good is this thing? It's good. It's not the end all be all yet. But when I was using it first, I kind of like dipped my toe in the water by just saying, okay, like let's just edit some stuff first. Just see if it even has like a handle on basic grammar and sentence structure and all that. Handled it flawlessly. I think that's probably like one of the best use cases for this kind of thing because like grammar is pretty rigid in some sense. There is, you can take some creative liberties and, change your prose up a bit, but for the most part, readability is readability in grammar. So I was like, oh my gosh, it just fixed all my run-on sentences. It, made things crystal clear. It was something that was very, just kind of like changed and it's also something that like once you use it, I'm sure you've used it, right? The GPT-3.
Yeah.
Like once you use it, it's kind of like a feeling almost, where like you just kind of know that there's something that grabs you about it that kind of like informs you.
So I might have
big.
had a different experience than you. I tried it out, maybe even before it quote unquote blew up, like you said, because I remember I had like asked a couple things to it, and I was like, it's kind of boring, whatever. And I came back a few days later to try it again because everyone was talking about it, and the whole website was like locked down. I was like, we'll let you know when you can get in. So I may have been, ahead of the curve, so to speak.
Yeah.
But my experience was that it still seemed algorithmic to me. It didn't truly seem like an artificial intelligence. And so, I don't know, maybe that's just my fantastic mind thinking, watching all these movies and reading all these books and seeing what an AI is supposed to be and then comparing it to this, which is probably still algorithmic. I don't think it's truly intelligent and certainly not sentient, I'd say. But it did give me some interesting answers about stuff. I'm sorry, what was that?
Unless you're the Google engineer. The guy who came out of
Yeah, I did read that article. Are you referring to the one where he wrote like an open letter to Google saying that their AI was sentient or something like that?
Basically, yeah, essentially. They fired him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it is. The limitations are there for sure. Like, all it's really doing is, at a basic sense, trying to it just guesses the next word in the sentence or like in the phrase, So it just uses like repetition and learning to just know like the probability of which word will come next or which letter will come next. And so it's not really like even conscious of what it's doing. It's just spitting out information with like certain probabilities attached to it. And those just happen to make sense to our, human minds.
Well, and then me being the curious individual that I am, I asked it. I was like, are you sentient? And it's like, no, I'm not sentient. I was like, that's exactly what someone who's sentient would say. You don't want to get caught.
Yeah, you're probably programmed to say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's why I think for the editing, it's definitely something that's because like again, editing follows more of a structure, or just even grammar follows more of a structure, and so I think in those areas it really shines. And there's basic things too, like so. Then from there, I kind of went to, like tweaking certain parameters, like make the short sentences shorter. You can do things like mood changing on the piece, so you can change it from like a happy piece to a sad piece, just with like a prompt, which it does super fine. Like and again, it won't ever be. Well, I won't say ever, but in its current state, I don't think you'll just hand the reins off to this thing and just be like, okay, it did all my work for me. Hit publish on Amazon Kindle. We're good to go. I don't think it's quite there yet.
But do you think it'll get there someday, or do you think that human creativity has a certain spark to it that machines will never be able to replicate?
I definitely think that, yeah. I mean, and that's a whole different spiritual and philosophical conversation of where does even like inspiration come from, Is it like some biological manifestation from all our inputs and stuff? In which case, if it is, then a machine can do that too. But if you believe it comes from somewhere like outside yourself, outside the material, like true inspiration, then I don't think a machine could ever do that.
So what do you think about this idea? And this is not an idea that I'm coming up with. I've heard this plenty of other places. But this idea that humanity is a stepping stone to artificial intelligence. Like, for example, evolution took us up and made us intelligent. And we're just an in-between stepping stone to what the next step is. And that is an immortal artificial intelligence that will travel throughout the entire universe and learn about the universe and propagate itself everywhere. What do you think about that idea?
It's an interesting one, yeah. It's hard to, like, I mean, is this part of the, because there's the idea that, like, some alien imprinted, like, DNA, or, like, some artificial intelligence life form imprinted, like, human DNA, like, knowing it was going to be destroyed, essentially, to, like, grow back up and then recreate it physically in the world, which is always kind of interesting. But
yeah, that kind of idea.
Yeah. I don't subscribe to it, but it is super interesting. Like, I think people will kind of merge with technology. It's to greater and greater extents, by all means.
Yeah. I mean, we're already well headed there. Like, I mean, if you look at our phones, you've got these big ear things on that are helping me talk to you from across the country. Everything is more and more an extension of ourselves. And you got Google Glasses, which kind of failed, but it was a neat idea. And then they're doing implants now. And my dad, he has like hearing aids that connect to his phone via Bluetooth. So you can't even tell that he's on his phone. And I mean, even Bluetooth earpieces themselves are pretty small. And it's like more and more, everything is becoming more integrated. I guess the question is, at what point are we cyborgs versus there's an artificial intelligence that's bound with us or running us or something like that? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it gets into a lot of semantics where it's like, you know, like you said, you got the phone in your hand all the time. And so, you know, at that point, what's like the difference between the phone, your mind, and your hand is a few atoms and some consciousness, you know? Like, it's what's always interesting about like a body is that, you know, if you gained a bunch of weight and then you say, this is you, right? You take up this space, then you lose a bunch of weight. Like, are you still that space that was missing? Like, you know, there's all this space that's gone that you previously occupied that you don't anymore. And so it's like, is that still you? Like, who's to say, you know, or phantom limb type stuff.
I think the point you're kind of alluding to is that we're more than just our body. We're an essence, so to speak. So some people might call it a soul or a spirit or something like that. So going back to the AI point, do you think that they will ever have sentience and essence, or is everything zeros and ones? And even if they are an incredibly complex algorithm, they're still faking it at some point. Faking being, you know, sentient.
This is like a 3-hour conversation now, but
well, you only got 48 more minutes, so.
It basically boils down to like what is real, and in my mind, and so like the definitions of reality are gonna, and consciousness and being are very, I don't think as black and white as people think. Like, people think, wow, like, you know, I'm a being. That rock is not a being. You know, it exists, but it's not a being. And now we're getting into some like weird Eastern stuff, but like a lot of being is just the collection. In my mind, is a collection of different principles into one essence, I guess. So it's like you see a chair, it's made up of like legs, an armrest, you know, whatever things make up a chair. You know, but you don't, like when you encounter that, you just automatically see a chair, right? Like, you don't see all the parts individually, you see the whole thing. And so it takes on like a life of its own outside of just the material. And so like that being starts outside the material world in a sense. And so I think people operate in that same space as well. It's just not as obvious because we have tangible bodies and we have senses and stuff. So it's kind of distracting. But at the most fundamental sense, like I think people are a collection.
I might have to edit that out. I think we lost you for a second there. You and your internet, I don't even know what you said for the last 15 seconds. You're going to have to repeat that.
It probably was. Yeah. But basically, did you hear the chair part?
I heard the chair part, yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like, if you're a collection of your ideas, or a collection of these identities, that make up you, and that's how you exist. It's just different beings or different things express themselves in the world in different ways. It's not any like more or less than another thing. It's just different ways that they're expressed in the world. So
okay,
it's going to be, that's a, again, 3-hour conversation.
Well, let's stick to writing for now, and you and I will get beers and talk about this some other day.
Yeah, I'll send you a video on does Santa Claus exist? Spoiler, yes.
So let's talk about AI in popular culture, whether that be books or movies or video games. And I'm kind of going to branch out past just writing right now. I guess it all is kind of writing, but past just strictly books. And I guess I'm going to kind of throw some characters at you, and I want your thoughts on them. We'll just do that. I'm sorry, what was that?
C-3PO?
That's exactly where I was going to start. That's crazy that you threw that at me. I was literally going to say, our favorite protocol droid flew in over 6 million forms of communication.
I knew what you were going to say.
I can't say that he was the first ever AI thrown on screen. I don't know when 2001: A Space Odyssey came out. That's on here now as well. HAL 9000. Then we got Blade Runner. I think there was a movie that was literally called Artificial Intelligence that I saw a long time ago about like a little kid that was AI.
Mel Gibson or something?
What was that?
Was it like with Mel Gibson or something? I know Steven Spielberg did it, but
I don't remember who it was with. And then we also got Cortana from Halo. So a very wide array of different AIs, all with their own different personalities, so to speak. So what do you think about, let's just start with C-3PO because you mentioned that as well. That's crazy that we both had that on the list. Do you think he is an accurate representation of what AI will turn into?
No. Well, I mean, it'll take every form, really. Like, it won't be, like, there'll be probably some sort of subsystems in your dishwasher to, like, control how much fluid's being, like, sprayed out at the exact plate it needs to be sprayed out at, so it'll be everything from there to, using more advanced learning in data centers and cloud servers to, like, manage energy on, like, a very efficient scale. So I think it'll be just ubiquitous.
Well, so I think the things that you just mentioned don't necessarily require artificial intelligence, though. Those can all be done algorithmically. Like there could be a camera inside your dishwasher looking and seeing the white plate, and if there's a black spot, shoot more detergent at it or whatever. That doesn't necessarily require artificial intelligence. So do you think that AI will be as widespread as in every single piece of technology to replace algorithms? Is that kind of what you're going at? You think algorithms will be useless because AI will be so good?
Well, AI is just an algorithm as well. It's not any different. Like it still is a series of steps that it's just a different implementation of an algorithm, and so it's kind of like an evolution of the process by which these algorithms are played out, I guess. And so it's more so for training and like learning and adapting, whereas like an algorithm isn't. Algorithm's like a very general term, but like a specific software isn't going to adapt to its environment, or it's set up to do one thing, whereas like deep learning is more, I think what it's called is like how is it going to adapt to its environment, and how is it going to like evolve essentially.
Mm-hmm. I think we're having a little bit of a disconnect because I think people are using the term AI right now, but it's not truly an AI. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but I am not convinced that what they are making is truly what you and I think when we talk about, C-3PO or David from Artificial Intelligence or HAL 9000. Like those to me are true AIs. They're like, maybe they have personalities, so to speak, and they have agendas. Like I would not say that an algorithm necessarily has an agenda. And I don't think AI today at this point is at that point where it has an agenda yet. Would you agree?
I would disagree just because like even if you type in ChatGPT, like, are you sentient? It says no. Like it's already been programmed with an agenda. It won't show you explicit images, or like some of the images ones won't show you explicit images, or tell you how to make a bomb.
But the fact that it has been programmed and is obeying its programming shows that it's not truly artificial intelligence, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like if your parents came to you and told you don't go in the candy jar, if you were an algorithm, you would have to obey that. But you have free will. I mean, that's a whole argument too, right? But if you want to get the candy, you're going to go get the candy.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, but the thing is, okay, so you've put these parameters in place. The only difference between free will and not is whether you put the parameters in then, right? Like if you didn't put parameters on it, then would it have free will?
It could probably do whatever it wanted, yeah. If it wanted to show you those explicit images like I asked 7 or 8 times. But
and so it's like everything is programmed to some extent. Like it doesn't matter if it's people, if it's artificial intelligence, whatever it is. Like it's all been, there's some base seed that things start from. Like even DNA is a form of information that expresses itself physically and mentally. So I don't know. Like that's kind of starting you off on a path already. You never just truly start on your own outside of everything, I guess, to make your own.
So then going further down the line, let's say 100 years from now when AI is way more refined than it is now, do you think it will still obey certain rules and laws? Like let's take Asimov's rules of robotics, for example. Now, I'm not sure if he was thinking specifically for AI, because I think AI can be in a computer and not have a physical form through which it interacts with the world. And then there's like robots, so to speak. And I think his were more towards robotics. But are you familiar with those rules of robotics?
Something, yeah. I mean, vaguely, but you can refresh.
So to paraphrase them, the first one is a robot may not, through action or inaction, harm a human. The second one was a robot must obey a human except where it conflicts with the first law. And then the third one was it must preserve itself except where it conflicts with the first or second laws. Again, to paraphrase, I haven't looked at them in so long.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
So do you think that AI will eventually inhabit a robot form? Is that something you see happening in the future, or will it be strictly on the internet in our PCs, so to speak?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was like saying, where like the ubiquity comes in, like the dishwasher using deep learning and your the cloud server, and it'll also be probably like a CP3O thing where CP3O. I haven't said that name in forever. Well, since I mentioned it, but and then there will be Boston Dynamic robots that use this deep learning and like general intelligence approach to try to traverse their environments, and there'll be hospice care robots that use chat GPT like things to communicate with patients and relay information back to doctors. So I think it'll be everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's stop talking about other people's writing and let's talk about your writing. Finally,
Yeah.
Here we are, 24 minutes in. So how are you
we're good.
incorporating AI into your writing? And I'm assuming you are, because you wanted to talk to me about this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about, whether it's just the ethics of it. Are you going to be out of a job as a writer? Probably. No, I'm just kidding. Job might change. But, so for me, like, I think the process was kind of like I described a little bit earlier, where, went from editing to, then I was, I decided to try to like actually just write out a basic plot, and then have it generated. And so, like, I think there's a lot of potential even there to have, like, it's like being a director kind of, right? You don't, like, when you're the director, you're not over there doing the VFX and, you're not over there holding the camera unless you're James Cameron. You're not, finding out focal length, all these like technical little things you're not doing, but you are like setting up the grand vision and trying to like portray the tone and like make sure all the messages are coming through and things look how they're supposed to look in your mind. And so I see it a lot like that where, it's not going to cover up lazy storytelling or people that don't have ideas. Like you'll be able to just say, make me a story, and it will. But I don't think it'll have that spark that really like compels people to pay attention to your work. So for me, like I was trying to just make prompts and it worked out super cool. Just like to write, like it's not at the point where it'll write everything either. You have to go back and like edit it and still, look through stuff, make sure it's not spitting out nonsense, but for a tool that can do 75% of the grunt work, it's pretty amazing to just like, why wouldn't you use that tool, I guess, in my mind. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I think you and I are speaking about two different things. And I'm realizing as you're telling me this, I thought you wanted to have a conversation about AI in our universes. And you're talking about manipulating AI to write stories for you.
Yes. That trains in the night there. Yeah, I totally missed that one.
Well, do you have any AI in your universes?
Yeah. One of the, so part of my dystopian, I guess dystopian, but saga is basically artificial intelligence. So similar to how like, you need lots of data, right, for these models to work in real life, in the future, in my like universe, whatever. There's these corporations that basically just pay people to, all they do is just input like their inspiration into large data models. And so because like they need the artificial intelligence to learn and to like come up with novel things. So they basically are just trying to like suck people's inspiration dry by just like having them come up with novel things and just entering stuff into this system. And so like people,
there's a couple interesting things with like getting data from the masses to train your AI. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is what's going on, but I've heard places that, whenever you do like the CAPTCHA, whenever you're on a website and it's like, point out all the stop signs or point out all the buses or something like that. What you're actually doing is training AI. And so an AI then reviews it and they say, okay, well, the human said this, so this must be right. And obviously there is a definitive answer, but it's literally using you to train the AI in some regards.
I can see that. They pay people like 5 cents a day in India to like label images and stuff and like, train AI that way. So,
then I've also heard this other theory. I guess you could call it a conspiracy theory if you want, but the government, we'll just say the government, them, they out there, the bad guys, whoever they are, they're holding all data that basically ever existed and ever is being created, today. So this conversation, even if I never post this on YouTube, my computer's still recording it through some secret algorithm and keeping it somewhere. And then my phone is listening to me yes, I am using Chrome, so that's probably why. And then my phone is listening to me at all times, and your phone's listening at all times. And we can't really do anything with this data yet because we don't have the technological processing power, so to speak. But they're holding it all somewhere so that when they get an AI that's powerful enough and can process it quickly enough, they're going to basically process all the data since the internet came out in 1984 or whatever it was. I don't know the exact year. And have an immense learning spike for this AI, but then also have tons of data on everybody in the entire world or that has technology around them, so to speak. So shows a little bit of a villainous side of what AI could possibly be. And you mentioned that yours is a dystopia as well. Do you see that ever happening?
Yeah, it's hard to classify. Like the hard thing with raw data, at least right now, is you have to classify it to make it useful, or like you have to have a person to make sense of it first to be useful. There might be a way that you can automate that in the future, and in that case, it would be very interesting to see like what kind of data becomes useful to these different algorithms and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the whole point, is that the AI will do it because they can't do it right now, whoever the they is, obviously. And then they'll have tons of data on everybody and know your deepest, wildest desires and know your search history from 2 a.m. that one time you were looking up how to do something you shouldn't, whatever that is. I'll let your own conscience wander with that.
You let your imagination run wild. I mean, that already happens. Like, you get targeted ads. Like, people already know your, Target or whatever. I think it was Target or Kmart or somebody, sent has sent ads for like pregnancy stuff to, a teen girl before she even knew, and then her dad found it, and then he got all mad and was like, "Oh wait, she actually was pregnant." They just knew off her buying habits that she would like, and matching her with other pregnant women that she was like in that category. So I mean, the hard thing is like you don't know what's relevant, or like a computer doesn't know what's relevant to humans, like data wise. It's like there's so many like not dumb things. Well, I guess dumb things that like people don't care about that we have data for. It's like you don't need to know the infrared spectrum for Tuesday on a March 30th 20 years ago. Like that's just useless data, right? And so that was kind of like and so no matter what the system of AI is, there has to be some sort of guiding force. Like there's no, like we were talking about the sentient or the sentience at the beginning, where it's like, were they pre-programmed to like have these responses or things they won't do? It's like there has to be some direction of attention at the beginning, to even point them in these things in the right direction of what to learn or what to pay attention to, or because there's infinite amount of noise. Like they can pay attention to each atom and how it rotates. Like that's completely useless to us, like data-wise, but it's something you could measure.
Yeah. So. Well, I guess the question is like, it goes back to motive. Will this future nebulous AI have a motive? And hopefully that motive is not to exterminate all the disgusting little human rats that are running across the earth because we're gross.
Yeah. And now this is the part where I want to interview you.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it. So would you use, I want to know how you feel about this and how you would kind of, like, would you implement this? Do you have a moral issue with, using this as a tool or anything like that? I don't have necessarily a moral issue as long as you're not, like, taking credit for it. So, like, if I were to go and get it to write a story for me and then I would put it up as my own, I feel like that's a little bit shisty. But if I were to go and use it and say, okay, gosh, I got writer's block, like let's see if it throws some ideas at me and then I write my own stuff, I don't have a problem with that.
So like what percentage, because they have exactly that where like, I think it's Jasper AI or something. It's basically, if you do get stuck, you just hit this button and then it just makes a paragraph for you after the one you've written. So how many of those paragraphs would you get stuck and use before it's considered not your work in your mind?
I guess it's a question of ethics, so to speak. If I were to read it and then if I were to compare two things and they were basically indistinguishable, then I would probably say it was unethical. But if it was so drastically changed, then it's your own work. It's like, you go to college and you read books and you put in citations, you just put it in your own words.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying if the output is different than what you would have
So
written?
if the AI output something and what I put in my novel was so similar to it that I could at a glance be like, okay, these words are all the same and these paragraph headings are the same and all that stuff, I would say that that's probably unethical if you're trying to take credit for it. But if the AI were to spit something out and I were to take that and say, okay, that's a good idea, I'm going to reword this whole thing and switch this idea around and extrapolate what I find value from in it, I don't think that's so different than going to a textbook and taking a citation and rewording it in my own words and saying, this is what the author said.
I see. So as long as you're just using it for inspiration and not the work, the blunt workforce of it.
But I mean, I'm sure that there are going to be people that put out whole novels that are written by AI and then, oh, you've already done that? Is that what you...
That's what my third one's going to be, yeah.
Written by
currently
AI
editing
and then
one.
maybe edited or something. And
Well, yeah, for sure. I'm not going to like just push generate and then publish it. Like there's
it's
craftsmanship
probably
that goes
better
into
than some of the stuff some people put out, to be honest.
it. It's better than what I put out. Like some of the passages I was editing, I'm like, that reads way better and is way more intriguing. I'm going with that.
So that's where style comes in, though. Like when I write, for example, I've learned to block out all of the squiggly blue lines in Microsoft Word because it doesn't like my style. There's so many of them. So maybe it means I'm a terrible author. I don't know. But I don't know if an AI would. I mean, I'm sure an AI could read what I've written and then stylistically copy it. But I don't think that my style is currently something that an AI would put out naturally, if that makes sense.
You know what you can do? Especially once there's more available.
Put it all in there.
Yeah, with the image ones, you can actually train using your own data sets to add to like the current models. So you can actually add your own data set of like images and stuff, and then it'll use those images to create like stylistically the type of images that, you know, like whatever you prompt, you just put that style in there, and it'll like.
I will say that I have seen the AI generated images, and those are pretty impressive. Especially coming from someone who is a terrible author, like stick figures on a good or author. Oh gosh, I hope nobody heard that. Terrible artist.
Clip it.
Freudian slipped. Someone who is a terrible artist, I can do stick figures on a good day. It's like, I'm a terrible artist. And I see the stuff that this AI generates. I'm like, wow, you can literally type in a sentence like, it's a dragon curling around the moon on a Tuesday evening and there's stars in the back and a forest fire beneath it. And it's like, it pops it out. I'm like, what the heck? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, now, even though, again, there's like some amount of tweaking that it takes, like to get those really perfect images, you really have to like put in the work still, which people don't realize. Like, people think you're just typing in a sentence and it makes this perfect looking image. It'll make something good, but to really make it look perfect, you have to do a bunch of masking and like bringing in other photos and doing like really specific prompts. And it's a whole like subsystem of learning and like speaking a different language, but it's not quite at the point where it just makes all those awesome images that, I mean, some of them it will, but for the most part, like you have to do some tweaking. So,
yeah.
And I feel
well, kind of going back to your ethics point, my fear is twofold. It's one, that people will lose their creativity because they're going to be like, why should I spend this time and brain power writing when I can have an AI do it for me and just pop out Pulp Fiction, so to speak? Something that has no meaning to it and is just entertaining. And, you know, I'm not against Pulp Fiction, so to speak. I think there is a value in just reading something for entertainment. But if all art were to become that, I would be drastically disappointed with the human race.
Yeah, I think the scatter plot of people that do whatever they do already is going to stay the same. So the people that are creative are going to stay creative, and they're going to use it for creative purposes. The people that are, you know, making Star Wars 13 right now or 15 are going to keep doing that, working for Disney or whatever. You know, Disney's going to keep pumping out Star Wars 20, and it's going to be the same thing again. So I don't know. Like, I think people, it's just a tool, right? Like, if it's just a tool, then it's whatever people's inner inclination is what's going to drive the tool. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm curious because you would use it for inspiration. Do you get joy or like some sort of fulfillment from the like technical writing process or like some of the prose crafting?
I do. I like making things sound more interesting than they actually are. I want someone to read my description of...
Good thing you're a podcast host.
I want someone to read
about making
my...
me sound better, more interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I want someone to read my completely bland description of a field, or a description of a bland field, rather, and find something interesting about the way that I phrased it. Is kind of what I find joy in. It's like joy in the brushstrokes and also the broader picture. Like I don't know, because I haven't studied how in depth of a story an AI could generate, let's pretend that it's going to be like a 300-page story. I don't know if it could do that, and even if it could, if there would be congruencies from the front to the back, if there would be discrepancies, if they would have a theme running throughout it, like all of these things, I don't think it can currently do. I'm sure in the future it will be able to much more easily mimic that. But right now I still have faith in my own creative abilities.
Nice. Creative process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, again, like I don't, like it's not going to be, it's not this all-encompassing thing. Like, I think people see it on the horizon as something like that, you know, that it's going to be something that's going to, you know, take over the world, and it might eventually. Like, it'll probably happen quickly, but as for now, it's like, it's pretty limited in what it can do. But I think if you're wanting to integrate into the future, it's like a great time to learn the tool, you know, and try to understand it, try to kind of come to grips with what it is. So like as iterations keep rolling out, you can kind of approach it with a level head and like you said, like you were mentioning, kind of like, you know, integrity or respect for the creative process. And so I think if you know, understand, the more you understand it, the more you can integrate it into your own work in a way that has integrity. And it isn't just copying some, you know, generating a whole novel or copying someone else's work or whatever. One interesting thing I will say though is, since like the data sets are based off of like written stuff off the web and like books and whatnot, in a sense, the voice, because, you know, whatever, if you're an artist, you got a voice, but the voice that comes out is almost like this universal general voice that kind of speaks to everybody, which is kind of interesting because the input is everybody's work and everybody's like collective knowledge and prose and everything. It's kind of like this almost beautiful blending and amalgamation of all this work that like is accessible. And I feel like is accessible to a lot of people, and it kind of speaks almost like a basic human language because of that or something.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think after this podcast, I'm going to go check it out again. And my new book is coming out on Tuesday. So if anybody, if anybody wants to read it, let me know.
I mean, there's some interesting use out there. I mean, there's people, you know, on YouTube, like how to start your own art business, you know, and make $20K a month off Dolly 2. It's like, okay. Or people selling like Etsy prints, you know, of AI art for like $30. You're just like, I know how long it took you to make that, dude. Like, it's not
no
even
time
original.
at all. You had to press print.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely that.
Any final comments before I let you go?
Yeah, I think just keep an open mind with it. Like I would encourage people to like look into it again, to just kind of familiarize yourself, not necessarily like go along with the hype, but just kind of look at it for yourself, see how it integrates into your workflow, how you can use it like properly, and kind of see how it can be meaningful to you in your work. And maybe it'll even enhance your creativity, because I feel like it has for me, where it's like, you know, kind of opens up either longer projects that I didn't want to put the time into. Now I can be like, oh, cool, like I can get into this, you know, this project, and I can cut my time down by half, you know? And so for me, that's a big thing. Or you can find some creative way to train add data in a way that's useful to you, or, you know, like you say, come up with inspiration. So find creative ways to use it is what I would say.
All right. I will do that. Everybody, Mr. Paul Tron.
Thanks, dude.